This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USAPrepares.com, and we're broadcasting 2 hours daily from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Tom is engineering the broadcast. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Am I ever blissed, Seth? Yes.
It's great to hear your voice, Dr. Shealy.
Always good to be with you, Vincent.
Dr. Shealy, you are a medical doctor, a surgeon of the year, PhD ×3, and Native American medicine man. I just want to make sure that our class knows who you are. Dr. Shealy, I have so many questions and thoughts today for you. And one of the things that we should talk about, you sent me an email yesterday about the power of prayer. I suggest that we do that on the second hour of the broadcast because you have some very definitive thoughts about the power of prayer.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Okay, and I remember, back in the 1950s and the 1960s, the Catholic Church that I attended with my parents and grandparents always prayed for the conversion of Russia, and they prayed for the conversion of Russia from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and I think it stopped in the 80s when there were some signs that Russia had been converted. So we'll talk about that. But coming up, like immediately on my list, is I've noticed that if I eat corn out of a can, which I don't do very often, but if I do, I immediately, within moments, get a stomach eruptus. I mean, I get a stomach ache to beat the band. It's really painful. And my question about that, Dr. Shealy, is could that be linked? It doesn't always happen with all corn, just some corn. If I get locally grown corn, for some reason, if our neighbor grows it, and I believe he uses non-genetically modified seeds to grow his corn, I don't get that stomach eruptus. Is it possible that that is from genetically modified corn that would cause me to have that violent reaction?
I think it's probable, Vince. I mean, obviously there's a couple of other things, including monosodium glutamate, which a lot of food mafia companies use indiscriminately in almost everything because it does enhance the taste and make you want more of it. It tickles the taste buds into thinking it's something great. Mm-hmm. And so monosodium glutamate can also cause a lot of problems. And they don't even, I'm not even sure they put it on the can or on the label frequently, but I think genetic modified, let's face it, genetic modified is not good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't really have any problems with what nature's been doing all along with our food supply and with our planet. We're evolving, and it seems to work just fine. And when we start messing around with it, that's when we seem to have the problems, like putting fish, cold water fish genes in a tomato. And I'm very concerned about that. Even Prince Charles is concerned about that, or at least he says he is.
Well, I certainly agree. And the companies, of course, won't tell you how much of it is genetically modified, but there's all kinds of evidence that a great deal of sweet corn is genetically modified.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, one of the things that I've noticed, I have some DVDs that I've been watching, and they were lent to us, and I've noticed that they're of television shows, and it's nice because I don't have to watch the commercials, but I don't watch much TV, and if I don't think that there's some educational value to putting something on a television screen, I absolutely won't watch it. But there's a program that I've been watching. It's called Homeland, and I really have a problem with the vulgarity, the innuendo, and just some of the scenes in it. Here's my question. The reason I'm watching is I believe it really shows what the CIA is doing with their spying, their snooping, how they don't, even the CIA employees don't trust each other. It's just a mess watching these people depict what the Hollywood thinks of the CIA. I think it's an eye-opener. But the point is, the foul language that I've seen creeping into the media, even on some radio broadcasters used to just absolutely filthy language on the air, I see that that's creeping into our society. Do you think that that's possible, that the foul language is creeping into society from the media, from the radio, and from television? Or do you think are they leading by?
The average person remembers watching 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
That means there's a lot of people watching much more than 40 hours because they're getting mine and yours.
Yeah. Those poor guys that are watching.
I can't imagine that I average an hour a week.
Yeah.
I watch Antiques Roadshow occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. I don't really care for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather read a book.
Oh, sure. But, Dr. Shealy, there are people who have talked to me off the air, manufacturers of current products, and they're saying, yeah, people don't want to read. They want to look at pictures. They want to get their information from pictures. It seems to me that would stunt our vocabulary. It would stunt our ability to become creative. I think the more words you know, the more inventive you can be, because you can discern fine shades of difference if you have a larger vocabulary than if you have a grunt vocabulary.
Well, I totally agree. And, my actual favorite thing to do is not to go to bed to read, because I fall asleep too easily, but to sit up in a nice,
mm-hmm.
comfortable chair
mm-hmm.
for an hour and an hour and a half each night before I go to bed. It sort of quiets me down, getting ready. I read things that I enjoy. I don't read, anything that isn't somehow intellectually stimulating,
mm-hmm.
but not, worrisome. I don't read any, just as I wouldn't go to a violent movie or watch a violent television thing. I don't read nonsense.
Right. No, I don't either. If there's no historical value, if there's no scientific value, if it's not real, I can't even start reading it if it's not about reality.
Well,
I have a real tough time with non-real books.
I would say for at least 40 or 50 years, even when I went to movies, which I used to, I would only go to comedies and musicals, period. And if I were going today, and I don't miss them, I don't go even to those today, but if I were going, that's what I would choose. We have enough serious things in the world. We don't need to watch it be recreated or made worse on the screen or even in a play.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've talked about this before. We don't have the heroes today that we used to have. We don't have anybody to look up to. Dr. Shealy, other than you and a few of our other instructors, I don't have very many people that I can look up to. Especially, seriously, I'm not kidding. I can't look up to a single politician. I can't look up to our president. I can't look up to anyone in Congress. I can't look up to any ball players, even musicians. You know, my wife went to school with a very, very well-known musician. If I mention his name, everybody would know this guy. And I can't even look up to him because he supported a lot of what Obama's doing. I'm thinking, what happened to him? There's literally nobody in the public arena other than you and a few of our other instructors that I look up to. Seriously. I don't have any heroes. And I'll bet you there aren't very many people who do have heroes.
Well, I agree. It's very difficult to find a true hero. And, of course, by the way, a hero, officially, the definition of a hero is someone who does something for the good of others without public acclaim. They don't do it for public acclaim. They do it because they want to help people. There's a big difference. And so there's no sports person who's a hero. They may be great jocks, but they're not heroes unless they do something other than the sport.
Well, since you mentioned sports and jocks, there's a post, I think I put it on the website, I think I hit publish this morning, that deals with a woman who has been taking anabolic steroids. And she's been taking them to such a great extent that she has gone from female to, she's getting closer to becoming a male. She even has the beginnings of a male organ. And she, seriously.
Hey, halitosis better no breath at all, I guess.
Well, my question deals with, okay, obviously, anabolic steroids can cause some problems. Can you tell us, I mean, let's see, who used anabolic steroids? Sylvester Stallone, he's admitted it. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's admitted it. And you look at these guys, you know, when they were in their peak, you'd say, oh, wow, how could they, you know, look so muscular? What are they doing that I'm not doing, you know? So they look superhuman. When we come back, can you tell us some of the dangers of anabolic steroids? What it could do to your body and maybe why we should not do it? Dr. Norman Shealy, normshealy.com. I'm Vincent Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and Dr. Shealy, we were talking about anabolic steroids. Arnold Schwarzenegger has admitted using them. Rocky, as we've seen him on TV, Sylvester Stallone has admitted using them. Do they make us wear out faster? I mean, do they pump us up for today and we pay for that tomorrow by becoming less healthy, or do we damage our organs, or what actually is the downside of anabolic steroids?
Well, the downside in the long run is just huge. It's sort of everything you've mentioned plus a lot more. But basically, the very interesting thing about it is anabolic steroids actually then stop you from making your own natural androgens. As in men, for instance, that it leads to shrinkage of the testicles, inability to make your own testosterone. And in women, of course, it acts as an increase in testosterone and can, of course, cause everything from growth of facial hair to deepening of the voice. Of course, acne is another potential side effect. The anabolic steroids actually are significantly negative is affecting the immune system. They depress immune function. They decrease glucose tolerance. So essentially, they increase insulin resistance and act very much like, ultimately, type 2 diabetes. And when it gets bad enough, this can be irreversible. You know, it can actually increase the risk of true diabetes. It also inhibits thyroid-stimulating hormone and therefore actually leads to low thyroid function. It also leads to multiple drug abuse. for some reason, people taking a lot of anabolic steroids, for some reason, are driven to want more and more and more and more, and they get into other so-called mood-enhancing street drugs, et cetera, et cetera. So the bottom line is natural approaches that help you optimize your own production are great, and artificial anabolic is not good, period.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, I know someone who uses steroids and to bulk up. And I believe that it has altered his personality to make him
aggressive.
Yes.
That's the best. You know.
Yes.
The basic thing is it is mood altering and makes people more aggressive.
And I wonder because you see a lot of these men in uniform, the cops, they work out and they want to stay in shape so that, they can tackle us faster and they can beat us up faster. And some of them really look in fabulous, fabulous shape. That shape that seems to be unobtainable naturally.
And, well, it's true. I saw last weekend I had some visitors from Wisconsin. I hadn't seen these people in 31 years. This one young man who was 9 when I last saw him. Now, he's actually distorted in his body. It's abnormally bulked.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had all kinds of problems with depression. I didn't ask him about anabolics, but, steroids, but I have a strong suspicion.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that's part of the reason why the police are so aggressive today. They're being trained that we are so dangerous they have to be aggressive. But I'm wondering if they're enhancing that along with the microwave radiation that's, it's in their police cars. I wonder if it's, enhanced even further with the anabolic steroids, just putting them on the edge all the time so that when they pull you over, and you just look out of your window, that's enough to set them off.
Right.
Make them want to drag you out of the car, and they're just ready to pummel us. And I'm just wondering, are we at the point where that could be true? The combination of all these things are making these guys, well, actually aggressive, I would say, would be the minimum that I'm saying.
Well, it's interesting, Vince, because there's another side of this, and it may somehow be related to what we're talking about, and that is the marked increase in estrogenic substances in our environment. A lot of petrochemicals are estrogenic. Dish detergent, pesticides, herbicides, and a lot of other things.
Let's talk about when we come back, Dr. Shealy. Dr. Norm Shealy, normshealy.com. I always have a lot of fun when I'm on the broadcast classroom with Dr. Norman Shealy. Dr. Shealy, you mentioned estrogenic chemicals and compounds and dish detergents and pesticides. Back in the 1960s, there used to be a commercial on television for Playtex gloves, and they were gloves that women would wear when they washed dishes. And their claim to fame was they're so thin you could pick up a dime. And they showed an image of a lady washing dishes in the kitchen, and there was a dime at the bottom of the sink, and she could just reach in with these Playtex gloves, and you could pick up that dime. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is it seemed like that is what you needed to do if you were going to wash your dishes. You need to use gloves to protect you from these estrogenic chemicals. Is that right?
Well, the interesting thing is the gloves themselves are probably estrogenic.
Ah.
A lot of plastics, a huge number of plastics such as PCBs, BPAs, phthalates, THALATES, all of these are estrogenic. And, it's everywhere. If you've got plastic seats, that's estrogenic. You're sitting on estrogen-producing stuff, and it comes into the air, and you breathe it in. It's everywhere, of course. So you want to avoid plastic of all kinds, almost, as much as possible. And let's not forget microwaves. When you put some plastic in of course, I don't even have a microwave oven. I don't believe in them. I think they're dangerous and have lots of negative effects on whatever's cooked in them. But if you put a plastic anything in there, it's going to release even more of that estrogenic stuff. And don't forget that soybeans have a lot of estrogenic potential. And I don't think people were really meant to eat a lot of soybeans.
So, Dr. Shealy, are we talking about becoming more feminine with these estrogenic compounds?
Well, not only becoming more feminine, but actually remember that the sperm count in males has decreased over the last 60 years from 150 million to under 50 million. And when it gets down to somewhere between 20 and 25 million, men are sterile. They can't produce anymore. So we're over 2/3 of the way down towards zero, and part of that is because of all the estrogens in our environment. So some of these men may be taking anabolic steroids because their estrogen has inhibited them from making their own testosterone adequately.
So they're taking estrogen in its place?
Well, I mean, the estrogen. They're not taking it; it gets into them because it's in the environment.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, wow. Well, because I've noticed that more and more men are looking more and more feminine. They're looking, Dr. Shealy, when I was in grammar school, there was no such term as man boobs. There was. Hey, I've seen many men where I've said, boy, I know many teenage girls who would be proud of those. Well, seriously, that was all the way through high school. I've never heard the term, even through college, Dr. Shealy. I'm talking through the 70s. There was no such thing as man boobs. That was not a term that was discussed. So it seems that we as men have become more and more feminine, and I think along with us becoming more feminine, we are less able to make decisions. We are less, I'll think about that because really it's kind of complicated, and we're not men anymore. We're a bunch of wimps. Now, I'm not saying that women are wimps. I'm just saying that men have lost the ability to lead their families.
Well, I think that is true. As a matter of fact, Vince, I looked for 20 years to find a physician that I thought had enough energy to manage my clinic. I interviewed 100 physicians, nice people, but they were all wimps, and they could never have managed the kind of patients that I was seeing.
Wow. What were they lacking, Dr. Shealy?
Oomph. Testosterone,
Okay.
a feeling of male energy. Now, I did interview a few women, too, but they were wimpy women, too, except for one. And I found her, but unfortunately she had a serious illness and didn't last very long.
So the ability to get started, the ability to make decisions, the ability to stick with whatever it is we're working on through completion is what you found lacking.
Right.
Yeah. I see more and more of that, and that's why I see fewer innovations today, and that's why I see fewer entrepreneurs today. People just give up. It's horrible. I mean, I can't give up, Dr. Shealy. I mean, if I give up, we'll lose the farm. I cannot give up. There's no choice.
Well, to me, there should be no choice for anyone. But, unfortunately, some people, because of whatever reason. Now, come on, Vince. I don't know your childhood that well, but I've met your mother. With a mother like that, yours, you've got to have had a good upbringing. You know?
Well, I'll tell you, if I did anything wrong, I knew what the consequences were. And Dr. Shealy, my parents did some things that were very, very unusual. For example, when I was in high school, my folks had dinner parties, with the neighbors. We lived in a neighborhood, and the neighbors had dinner parties. And so, I don't know, maybe once a month somebody would have one, and the neighbors would just socialize and get a chance to spend some time with each other. And I'm talking about the late 60s, early 70s. Well, in our kitchen was what was called a dry sink. And in the dry sink is where my parents kept beer and alcoholic beverages. And my father said to me, he said, son, if you want a drink, it's right here. This is, way, way, way before I was legally, according to the law, allowed to drink. And he said, it's right here. And you can have as much as you want. And you can have it whenever you want. But you're not allowed to go outside the property and go drinking. So if you want to drink, here it is. You can have as much as you want. And I never really had the desire to drink very much because it was there. I could have it whenever I wanted. So, but now, if we mention that today, I'm sure the police would be over at my house and haul my dad away.
Of course.
For child neglect, contributing to the delinquency of minors, child abuse. I mean, I don't know what else he'd get hauled away for.
Well,
but he was right.
My father offered me at age 15 or 16, if I would not drink or smoke until I was 21, he would give me $1,000. Now, he couldn't have paid me $1,000 or $10,000 to smoke, but because of that, I did not drink until I was 21, and then it was, very modest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same thing with us. So we're looking at the spiraling down of our social values, of our ability to get up and go, our ability to solve problems, our ability to stay with it. Boy, I think we're in a lot of trouble, Dr. Shealy, and I really can't see any fix other than getting back to the way we were maybe in the 1950s, where neighbors communicated with each other, they socialized with each other, they looked out for each other's children, and probably if Mrs. Cummings next door saw Pat Guadagno doing something that he shouldn't be doing, Mrs. Cummings would be on the phone to Pat Guadagno's mother saying, right. Hey, listen, I just want to let you know, Pat's being a bad boy. And so we were all on our best behavior. I mean, we really were all the time. Even when we knew no one was looking, we were still on our best behavior. I don't think we have that today.
Well, unfortunately, it starts and has been going on for a long time at the top. The role models, who you started off earlier talking about a role model, essentially. Mm-hmm. And we haven't had a role model sitting in the White House that would help what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And we can talk about that. You've got some thoughts on that. We'll talk about that at the top of the next hour. Dr. Shealy, when I first connected to this broadcast this morning, I was talking with our engineer, Tom, and he mentioned, I said, do you have any questions for Dr. Shealy? And we started talking about depression. And Tom has some thoughts on depression. And I asked him if he would mind sharing them with us. And he said he would share them with us. Tom, are you with us?
I am.
Tom, you got some thoughts on depression. That was very fascinating what you were saying. The link between legal, in some states, drugs, and depression. Please share that with us.
Well, in my experience, I've been finding that the people that I realize are depressed tend to smoke marijuana. And not all of them. It's not that marijuana leads to depression, but it does lead to being very lethargic. And this can lead to laying around and enjoying Facebook, which once again isn't bad until it goes on for a week or two. You get home from work or wherever and you go smoke, and then you just don't do anything. And I feel like it's the feeling of lack of productivity that may be leading to a lot of depression. And I've found myself, when I'm depressed, I just have to go out and do something, get up and be productive. When I've been jobless before, I would go out and buy a rake and hand out flyers and go rake lawns. And whereas it doesn't sound like it's exhilarating, it gets me out there and I feel like I'm doing something productive, and that will stave off that. But I find that being lethargic will lead to that, and marijuana does not help.
Smart guy, Tom. That's remarkable. So what your friends really need is oxytocin instead of, marijuana. They really need to boost their own oxytocin, which would give them a feeling of being okay and then wanting to do something.
Class, our engineer Tom in Minnesota had some thoughts on depression, and his response to whenever he felt inclined to be depressed, he would go out and be productive. Tom, please continue with your thoughts.
Well, if I was going to continue, first I want to prep with I'm not opposed to legal, I don't want to say legal, decriminalized marijuana, because I feel like the criminalizing marijuana leads to a higher arrest rates for pretty much what seems nonsense to me. But having said that, I also feel like the legalization of marijuana recently is becoming much more of an epidemic amongst young kids, and it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you could use it responsibly. It's like any drug, and I feel like that's it's becoming a major issue amongst people my age, especially considering the potency of marijuana has been going up over the years. And now, and actually most European countries, people don't actually smoke the marijuana itself. They refine it into hash, and it's kind of a lengthy process. So most people don't even do it in other countries. But here, we've mastered the perfection of it, and we actually use things like butane to create incredibly strong variations of it. And I actually have a friend, really nice, cool guy, and he's discovered that there's this stuff called dabs, which is a really highly refined hash. I think he said something like 90% THC or something, which is preposterous to me. That's insane. But he'll take one hit and be practically passed out. 2 hits, he is passed out. And I feel like if you could make it to a third, he'd be comatose. Not that it's legal or lethal. I'm sorry, but it's definitely painful watching him, because he did have a drug problem at one point, and it's almost like he's fallen back into it. Except for this time, it's a much closer to being legal substance than anything else he's ever done. So. My concern is the potency, and if you've got it growing outside or something, it's just naturally occurring. That's that'd be fine. But when you're making it to a medical grade and you're designing the stuff for cancer patients, I mean, you're trying to nullify pain completely, and that your average productive citizen does not need that in their system. I just can't imagine wanting to live life like that.
Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm totally with Tom. I think criminalizing marijuana is ridiculous because forbidden fruit is more attractive, and it's just part of the problem. I think people need to be educated and encouraged to use natural, safer things and do more things. And basically, again, I think the most important thing is that approximately 80% of people are not happy. 40% are truly clinically depressed, and another 40% have what I call subclinical depressive miasma. That is, they're just a few points away from depression. Those people need to stimulate their own system to make oxytocin. It's so important to have your own system feeling right. So, in my experience, Air Bliss is the simplest, safest, quickest way to stimulate your body to make its own oxytocin and make you feel good, so you don't need those other attempts to feel okay.
If I may hop in, another thing that I find may cause depression is your sleep schedule. I find a lot of people that do late night stuff, and once again, usually not productive, just staying up on the computer all night, staying until 3, 4 in the morning, and then sleeping until noon, tend to be really depressed. And getting your clock on time with the sun, your daytime, even just getting up when the sun gets up just makes you feel better. And I found that for myself, that was what changed my life, was changing my schedule. And I mean, when I was a teenager, I slept till all hours of the night. So,
well, you're right. And the other thing about that is that the light of a computer turns off your ability to make melatonin, which helps you to sleep. So it's inhibiting the natural sleep mechanism.
Class, when we come back, Dr. Shealy and I are going to be talking about natural products. We'll be talking a little bit about Kyani. We're going to talk about dogs and cats dying. About 4,000 have been killed or injured.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks.
Everyone all set? Cocked? And locked? Hour number 2, USAPrepares.com. Dr. Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, I'd like to read an email that I received yesterday. Now, this lady sent me this email, and then I asked her if I could call her back, and I called her, and she and I were on the phone for about, over a half an hour. And her name is Julie from Texas. And the email says, "Hi, Vince, just listening to your class with Janice, and you were discussing how government educated children are more focused on electronics and social media than homeschooled children. And that is so true. Children in some of the neighboring school districts where I live are all given iPads. Textbooks are e-books. Students text and have to email to get assignments from teachers. I think it's all done on purpose. This training to be connected to the matrix. It's hard to even have a conversation with these teens, as all they do is look at their stupid phones. Sad, best, and that comes from Julie in Texas. Now, when she and I were talking, Dr. Shealy, she mentioned that she loves listening to you on this broadcast. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that neat?
Well, I think she's right, of course. I cannot imagine wasting my time texting, period.
Right. And she's absolutely right. These children do look down at their electronic devices, their communicators, and they are texting each other. They're not talking. They're not using, the oral communications. They're using texting. They're using abbreviations. And I was talking to your friend, my friend, Dr. Julie Pennick, and I asked her if the text lingo has creeped into her medical training classes at the college. And she says they have. These words have migrated into the final examinations that the students take. They're writing these abbreviations that are text abbreviations as part of their responses in their test questions. We're becoming lazy, Dr. Shealy. So
I think
I just
have become is the word.
Before we get into the power of prayer, may we talk for a few minutes about what's happening with dogs and cats? There's a concern over, and here's what the post says on the website. So, class, if you'd like to look at it, dogs and cats are dying. There's a concern over pet treats from China. Products were recalled, and I'll give you the names. Nestle Purina Pet Care, Wagon Train, Canyon Creek Ranch Treats, Del Monte's, Milo's, Kitchen, Chicken Jerky, and Chicken Grillers. And there are others. These are pet treats that you give a well-behaved dog or cat as a thank you for being so well-behaved, and they're killing them. They've found nearly 600 animals have died, and more than 3,600 have become sick in a mystery of illnesses being linked to these jerky treats made in China. Now, we couldn't possibly know what it is, Dr. Shealy, that's causing it, but I want to ring the alarm. Don't buy Wagon Train jerky tenders. Don't buy Milo's Kitchen home-style dog treats made with real chicken jerky. Don't buy Canyon Creek Ranch chicken tenders for your dog. I remember back in 2007, there's a company called Menu Foods out of Canada, and they had about 100 brands that they manufactured dog food and cat food under these different brand names. And they had these wet dog food and cat food. And we literally gave, under our vet's direction, the wet dog food to our dog, and it killed him. It killed him. And so we were one that, suffered the consequences of feeding the dog wet dog food. Before that, we never did it. We would use the dry food, and that's not so good either. But the point is, Dr. Shealy, China, we're buying dog treats from China?
Well, it's crazy, 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 and evil on the part of the companies that are getting it from there. I would not choose to buy anything from China, but especially food or medicine or anything that you're going to put on or near your body.
I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Shealy, because when I go shopping with Mrs. Finelli, there are these packaged foods that you can buy, and I always look at the labels and where they're from, and if they don't say where they're from, I don't buy them. And if they say made in China, I don't buy them. I mean, why would I trust those guys? Let me share a very short story with you. When I lived in Virginia, we used to go to, and I've said this once before, we used to go to Sam's Club, and they had Virginia brand. When we lived in Virginia, Virginia brand honey. And we thought, this is made in Virginia. Great. Well, if you took 1 teaspoon of this Virginia brand honey that came from Sam's Club and put it in a cup of green tea, and the green tea, back then I used to drink tea out of light-colored mugs, either tan or white ceramic mugs. If you put green tea in there, the tea had a very light green color, very, very light, because I would use 1 tea bag for 10 cups of water. So it would be very light. I'd add in the honey, Virginia brand, and it would turn the tea black. I'm talking about black coffee, black. So I called up the company, and I explained what was going on. They thought I was kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. It's really doing it. And it's doing it with all of the tea that all the teas that we try it with, and it's only with Virginia brand honey. It doesn't do it with the other brands of honey we have. And I talked to the CEO. He called me back and he said, you're right. You're right. And they traced it down. What was happening is Virginia brand honey was imported from China, and they traced it to why. The Chinese were using galvanized steel buckets to transport the honey from the hives to where they were collecting it and putting it in steel drums to ship to the United States. And it was contaminated. Dr. Shealy, that caused a national recall of all Virginia brand honey at that time.
Well,
so
I
another
consider
Chinese
it
product.
criminal that they put Virginia in the name of it.
Yeah, Yeah, well, like Federal Reserve, right? So I wanted to share that with you. Do you have any thoughts before we go into, you want to talk about the power of prayer?
Well, there have been over the last 20 years many, many studies that have shown improvements in health, a decrease in crime when groups of people pray together. And it's been, sort of philosophically, metaphysically around for a long time. It seems to me that we now know that a huge proportion of Americans are unhappy with the current regime. It may not be 51% quite yet, but it's a huge percentage. And we don't need a majority necessarily, but we need a lot of people praying. And so I am just suggesting that we start a movement nationally to pray, not for any specific manner, but just ask in prayer that the current person in power be relieved of that power by the end of this year. That's putting it as nicely as I can. Wasn't that politically polite?
That was very politically polite. And back in the, as I said during the first hour, back in the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s, the Catholic Church would, at every Mass, pray for the conversion of Russia. Now, some people think that that conversion was back or from atheism back to Catholicism. I'm not sure what we were praying Russia to convert to, but it was away from becoming being atheistic. So, and it seemed to work because the Catholic Church prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for 30 years, at least that I know of, and there seemed to be a change. So, do you have a specific verbiage in mind for the prayer to remove?
Well, I mean, I say, God, we know that you know how to do it, and we just ask that you assist us in removing the current person in prayer by the end of this year, because we need to be free of that.
So, Dr. Shealy, we're talking about we want to be free from government spying on our emails. Government spying.
I obviously all of the government control mechanisms that are unconstitutional, and of course the person responsible for all of these. I think that's the number one thing. We've got to get the person at the top who's responsible for this away from it in order to get the changes we need. Just like, and here's a very simple analogy. When Fukushima had the catastrophe, and the day after Fukushima went off a couple of years ago, I said this is the worst man-made disaster since Noah's flood. I meant it, and I still mean it. And I said I would not want to be the head of General Electric that designed that nuclear reactor. And I felt that person, the CEO, including the board of directors, are all responsible for the decision to build that reactor. Okay? And it's they should be tried, and if found guilty, and I can't see how they wouldn't be, put in jail for the rest of their lives. And that's because they're at the top. And we talked about first hour, we don't have any heroes. Well, we don't have any heroes. But the guy at the top is responsible. The buck stops there. The buck stops there. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. Medical doctor, PhD times 3, author of over 29 books, broadcaster of over 2.3 decades. Dr. Shealy, you were talking about Barack Obama, and you were talking about a prayer that you thought we should start here on this broadcast, Class from USA, preparedness.com. What do you think
the wording of that prayer should be?
Well, we know that miraculous changes happen when large groups of people pray together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to have 150 million people joining us daily in this prayer. Dear God, you know how best to help it happen. Please remove Barack Obama from power this year. Amen.
So that's, Dear God, you know how best to help it happen. Please remove Barack Obama from power this year. Amen.
You got it.
There you go.
Wouldn't it be nice if the Tea Party and others took this up?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not asking how. We're just saying, let it be done.
Yeah, and maybe he can just decide to go play golf or basketball or just retire and let us restore our country. Dr. Shealy, Ron Gibson lives in the Carolinas, and he picks up this broadcast, and every day he takes the broadcast and posts it on YouTube. He does a fabulous, fabulous job. He may pick this up and put it on YouTube. So,
Ron, more power to you.
Yeah, I know you're very concerned about the heading, the direction that this country is going in, and you're absolutely right. We are falling down very quickly, and we're allowing it to happen. We're allowing the spying. We're allowing the listening in on our telephone calls, the reading of our text, the reading and storing of our text and emails and phone calls forever, to be used as evidence. I guess that would be against us. We are actually paying for all this to happen with our own money. It's got to stop. It has to stop. We're being poisoned with genetically modified foods. The Food and Drug Administration is standing off to the side, allowing it to happen. The USDA is beating up little farmers, small farmers that are raising good quality, wholesome food, because good food is something that you can't have. And of course, and I'll say this, of course, there are expos. There are expos going on in this country that are working in concert with the federal government. And if you want, you can get free tickets to go to these expos. All you have to do is provide your email address, and you will be tracked. You'll be tracked. That email address list is available for sale. So if you're thinking about letting the government know who you are, it's really simple. Just go to one of those expos, get the free tickets, get the free email tickets, and you'll see on their website, FEMA. You'll see it right on the website. So if you want them to know who you are, just get the free tickets. And if you think about it, who is the biggest problem for the federal government at this point? It would be people who are independent-minded. It is people who want to control their own destiny, who want to grow their own food. And what best way to find out who you are than to give you free tickets to go to a preparedness expo? They've got your emails if you do that. I don't do that. I don't collect your emails for purposes other than if you want to communicate with me, that's great. But I don't have a database of who you are. I don't want one. But other expos do. Keep that in mind, class. Dr. Shealy, we talked about depression. Why don't we talk about health? And you mentioned natural alternatives. Kyani seems to be very, very important to you. I take Kyani's Nitro Extreme every day. My mom does. My wife does. And I wanted to report that that one chicken that we have been giving Kyani to is still with us. She's she's a.
This has been at least 6 months now, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, she was at death's door, and what we do now is we give her 1 or 2 drops of Kyani. I pick her up. I give her a big hug every day, and I put 1 or 2 drops of Kyani Nitro Extreme on a spoon, and I give it to her, and she knows what it is. She gets her big hug. She drinks her Kyani, and she's doing fine. So it's working. It's working for me. No age spots. It works for my mom, who's 90. It works for my wife. We all take it. I know you do. We come back. Can we talk about Kyani Nitro Extreme and your findings? Okay, Dr. Norman Shealy and I will be right back. Dr. Shealy's with us, and Dr. Shealy, I just got off the phone with Paul Victor. He's one of our instructors. And I think he may call in about the power of prayer, something called imprecatory prayer. So I see that the phone is ringing right now in Minnesota. I'm in Missouri. And then we can, why don't we talk about Kyani right now, and then we'll take that call.
Wonderful.
So, Dr. Shealy, you were at one of our meetups, actually several of our meetups, and you did a clinic.
Right, and I'd love to do it again. Unfortunately, after next Monday, I'm gone for a couple of weeks.
Okay. What? So maybe in 3 weeks or so?
Yeah, the first Monday that would work would be the 18th.
Okay. You want me to put that down?
I've got it in my book. I'll
Okay.
put it in.
Okay, Dr. Shealy will be doing a blood pressure clinic at Ziggy's on November 18th, right?
You got it.
Nope. November 18th, blood pressure clinic at Ziggy's. That sounds great. The last time you did one, we had a lady who had a choice. She could either go to the emergency room or she could spend time with you. She decided to spend time with you. Her blood pressure was well over 200, top number, and she was in serious, serious trouble. So let's talk about how we can lower our blood pressure. Oh, by the way, you did lower her blood pressure immediately within 30 minutes. You had it down to the 150s, and then 3 days later you had her down normal.
And that has been my experience with 70% of over 230 people I have personally tested.
Okay, 70%. And you just do what, Dr. Shealy? What do you suggest that they...
Well, basically, we just check the blood pressure, give them, depending on how high the blood pressure is, 15 or 30 drops of Kyani Nitro Extreme, and then recheck the blood pressure in 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, out of 230-plus people, 70% have had an excellent response with normalization of blood pressure.
Okay, and what do we do if they're already on blood pressure medicine, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I usually give somewhat less, and to start, 15 drops usually max. Mm-hmm. But in my experience, I've been able to get most people weaned off their medications over a period of 3 or 4 weeks.
And this is an all-natural product?
All natural, totally safe. I have not seen any problems with it. And
okay.
Well,
I have a post on the website, usaprepares.com, page number 1. I buy it. Dr. Shealy buys it. We pay the discounted price. You can do that too. And if you just want to figure out how to buy it, just go to our website, usaprepares.com. There's a post from Dr. Shealy there, and you'll see it, page 1. And you can click on it and buy it. It's a small bottle, and it's about a month's supply of 15 drops twice a day. My mom takes it. I take it. My wife takes it. And my favorite chicken takes it. And I've heard, Dr. Shealy, I've heard from veterinarians that they have experimented with it. Dogs and cats slated for mercy killing because they are so sick. There's nothing that can be done for them. That veterinarians have tried this, and they have turned around the animals kind of the same way I did with my pet chicken. So I believe it works, and I do take it religiously. I guess that's part of my religion now, to take Kyani Nitro Extreme. Dr. Shealy, is there anything else that you'd like to share about that?
Well, I think in addition to blood pressure, there's one other aspect that to me is at least equally important. The single most common problem that people complain of is inadequate energy. Feeling tired, just not having it. There's just no question that Kyani improves energy, life energy, physical energy, mental energy. That's the reason I started taking it. I didn't have a problem with high blood pressure, but as I began my research with it almost 2 years ago, my patients were telling me how much more energetic they feel. So finally, September of last year, I said, hey, I'm going to try this. And it does. And I really, really enjoy having that extra boost of energy.
Well, I can tell you, Ken Hurley, one of our instructors, takes it. Dr. Howard Shayne takes it. Judy Dollarhite takes it. John Dollarhite takes it. There are a whole bunch of us. Probably most of the people that come to our meetups at Ziggy's take it. And really, literally, just before the broadcast, a few minutes before the broadcast, I take the Kyanie Nitro Extreme. I keep a bottle right here in the studio, and I think it works. I really do. So I'm giving you my opinion of what I've seen. And so if you'd like, just take a look, read about it. It's on the website, usapreparedness.com. Dr. Shealy, Paul Victor's on the line with us. And Paul, you had some thoughts about the power of prayer.
Yes, I sent you an email basically describing imprecatory prayer. Imprecatory prayer is something that was practiced by King David, and he prayed against his enemies. And you could look that up in Psalms 83. So it's definitely a targeted request of the Almighty to take care of and deal with the enemies of righteousness. The word I believe, is very powerful, and it's just been recently discovered. I believe there was a Japanese scientist that discovered how words can actually affect water. And us human beings are, what are we, like 85% water? And if you try to get this information off of YouTube, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you can Google the structure of water and how it's affected by words, and it's amazing. There's some examples where there was a glass of water, and he basically cursed and used expletives against this glass of water, and then put it under a microscope, and he saw the structure of water change. It was like very ugly under the microscope, and then he did the same thing where he blessed the glass of water and spoke very positive things, and put that under the microscope, and the structure of water changed to something beautiful like snowflakes and so on and so forth. So it's very powerful. We have a lot of power at our disposal, and we don't know it. That's why I think there's such a great emphasis on removing the Ten Commandments from the courthouse, or any vestiges of anything to do with God or His Word. They want to totally eliminate it from the society because they know it's powerful.
You're absolutely right, of course, and I'm well aware of that work with the effect of words and prayer on water. In fact, I wrote a comment for the cover of the book. And so we need to be praying to improve the government of our country.
Absolutely. And if you're praying against any specific person or maybe politician, it's important to put on what's called the full armor of God, and that's described in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13 to 18, to pray the armor of God upon you and your family for protection, to put a hedge of protection around yourself and your family so that the evil one will not have any effect on you. Okay, it's important to do that first. But if two or three are agreed and focus in on a particular project or a person or situation, I think through the power of prayer, you'll see things change.
Right. The person you're talking about who wrote the book about this, by the way, is Dr. Emoto's.
Yes, that's right.
Masaru Emoto.
Dr. Shealy,
yes.
This is very sobering, what we're talking about. We're saying that we are in so much trouble that we all have to get together, every single one of us, to pray for the solution. And it's very disturbing, Dr. Shealy, don't you think, that we've gotten to this point?
Well, it is,
have to
but
pray.
But the time has come, the walrus said, to speak of many things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to be open and honest about the fact that we need to pray as honest people for the solution to the problems that have been created.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe a good place to start would be to pray the removal of any politicians that are against the founding principles of our country, that they might be exposed to what their deeds are, and to remove them.
I agree with you. I think we might be left with 10%. But
well, 10% is better than what we have now.
You got it.
So we're now talking about praying for the removal of. What was your specific language there, Paul? Pray for the removal of any politicians?
For the removal of any officials that are acting contrary to the founding principles of our country and that are actually fighting against righteousness and righteous living.
Okay, I'm all for it.
I'm all for it, too.
It's nonviolent.
I think it's time for us to return to a sovereign nation under God.
Dr. Shealy and Paul Victor, I'll tell you, I don't think I have ever heard anyone say on the air, over the airwaves, over the internet, exactly what's been said. Praying for the removal of officials and politicians who are acting against the principles upon which this country was founded. It happened right here. You heard it live. Paul, would you like to stay with us through the break? Okay. Paul Victor, Dr. Norman Shealy. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Shealy's with us. Paul Victor's with us. Paul's a USAPreparedness.com instructor. He's going to be on the air with us on hour number 1, October 29th, next Tuesday. And we're going to be talking about protecting your financial assets. Dr. Shealy brought up the thought that we need to pray and pray for our president to leave office before the end of the year. We are not advocating violence in any way, shape, or form. We would just like him to leave. We think enough damage has been done, enough spying has been done, enough recording of our information, enough biometrics, enough is enough. And we would like him to just not be our president anymore. We're not wishing him any harm in any way, shape, or form, but we would like to restore America. Paul Victor's with us. Paul, I'm going to put you on hold for a second. We've got Michael from New York. Michael, you had some thoughts?
Good morning, Vince. It's Mike in Tennessee.
I'm sorry, Mike in Tennessee. It says Mike in New York. We have another Mike. Okay. Mike in Tennessee. Mike Parsons, yes.
I'd sent you an email a little while back regarding some of my experiences and the fact that while I was in jail, every day I would pray that the Lord would work on the judge in my case. And immediately after I was sentenced, he was so disturbed during this whole time that I was in the jail and they couldn't move me, that he ordered that I immediately be removed from the jail and shipped onto the prison, which normally it takes 6 months to a year before they'll actually move you from the jail to the prison after you're sentenced. Well, I was gone the next day, and I was later told that he was so disturbed by my presence there. Also, while in the prison, I was put in a room with a guy who was, I guess you would say he was totally out of his mind. He had multiple personalities that he would communicate with. He would stay awake for literally 7 days at a time, and then he would crash and sleep for 2 days, and he would talk constantly. And I put up with this for about 3 months, and then one night I asked the guy, did he want to be freed from this? And he did, but he said he couldn't. And so I said, well, let me pray for you and over you and touch you. And I prayed, and ask that the Lord come into the room, remove the evil spirits from this room and this man immediately. And in the name of Jesus, I touched this man on his forehead, and his eyes opened up, and he didn't say another word. He went straight to sleep, and the next day he asked to have another roommate or to be moved because he was absent of his friends that were in his mind, and he couldn't stand that. This man had been in solitary for 5 years, and when he was normal when he went in. When he came out, this is how he was. I believe the guy was somewhat possessed. I'd never seen a person like this, but literally, nonstop, for 7 days, he would talk and walk and move around the room nonstop.
I'd like to remind our class, Mike Parsons, that you were sent to prison for a crime that you did not commit. I want to make sure everybody understands that when you talk about prison, you are not a bad guy.
I was accused of aggravated assault because I possessed a gun, and in the law in Tennessee, if you're charged with possession of a gun in the commission of any kind of a crime, it's a felony. And I was engaged in the act of committing a citizen's arrest on a man who had shot 29 times at me and my wife and shot and killed my dog unprovoked in front of me. And that was my crime. I was railroaded because I was challenging a rigged election, and I was suing a judge and a prosecutor at the same time. So, yes, I stand.
I just want to make sure our radio class understands that because you were in prison does not mean that you're a bad guy. There are many of us who have been pursued by the police who have done nothing wrong, and one of us has even gone to jail for 16 years for rape and murder that he did not commit. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody knows. Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts about... Oh, shoot, we're out of time.
I think it's the way to go, Vince.
All right, Dr. Shealy, I'm going to put the prayer on the website. It'll be on page 1. Dr. Shealy's thoughts about praying for the removal of Barack Obama peacefully. Okay, we'd like him to leave office. And we'd like the whole world to join in on this prayer. It's for our best interest, and we're in the majority. Mike Parsons, thank you very much. Paul Victor, thank you very much. Dr. Norman Shealy, thank you very much. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you, and let's start praying.